This past week, Romanians took to the streets to protest judicial reform they believe would allow corruption to go unpunished. More than 40 civil society organizations alleged that the government had been taken over by a political mafia. The protests are the second mass demonstration this year against government attempts to overhaul the judiciary. On the 1st of February, more than 300,000 people protested across Romania, the largest demonstrations in the country since the fall of communism. We're joined over Skype by Carmen Constantin, a Romanian journalist. Carmen, thank you for joining us. And would you please tell us what were the events that led to these mass protests?
Well, there are people right now into the streets of Bucharest who are asking for the resignation of the government, the resignation of the main governing party's leader, Liviu Dragnea, who's accused of corruption deeds. And people are very upset about the judicial laws which are now discussed into the parliament, because they are apparently going to make easier for crooked politicians to avoid prison. And people are obviously not very keen into letting that happen.
But why people are suspicious of the reform? Why they at all think that this is a ploy by the government?
Because this is basically the same thing that was going to happen back in February. Even there are the same people who are trying to pulling this off, because there is this party leader, Liviu Dragnea, who's very powerful, very influential in Romania, and he's the head of the governing party here in Bucharest, and the Justice Minister, Florin Iordache, who was forced to resign by the protests back in the beginning of the year, is now head of a special commission, as it is called, in the parliament, whose main mission is to discuss the judicial laws, which are having basically the same point as the emergency ordinance, the number 13 emergency ordinance that was going to push the same sort of so-called reform back in the beginning of the year. So it is the same problem with the same people, and the people are again in the streets, obviously.
Why haven't they cooled down after such a long period, as the protests were continuing from January to March, and then 8 months of intermission? Why continue now?
Because this kind of legislation was, as one of the main political leaders for the Social Democrats here in Romania said, were discussed and forgotten at some point. Obviously, as the inquiries, the judicial inquiries against the politicians are getting into these guys, are getting closer into these guys, and they are really menaced by them right now. Menaced in the terms that they are facing prison penalties if they are found guilty, and the prosecutor's case seems very strong. So as this is unfolding, the politicians didn't just lay back on this. They are trying again to push the same reforms, as they call it, so they can stay in power and not get into jail.
And finally, why corruption is the word now in Romania for protesters?
Well, because there are corruption deeds that these politicians are accused of. And people are really, I mean, the fight against corruption in Romania is not a new thing. It lasts for about, let's say, 15 years, if not more. And up until probably 10 years ago, there was, if you were powerful enough in Romania, you could almost get away with anything. This is no longer the case right now with the anti-corruption prosecutor's office, which is very efficient. They have over 90% of the cases convicted. So right now, when they're looking into the dealing of these politicians, and people see that there is a piece of legislation trying to stop the prosecutors from doing their job, people no longer want to get into that situation when you could get away with almost anything in Romania. They want people who are corrupt to be punished for it. It's that simple.
Thank you very much, Carmen. Thank you. We will be keeping our eyes on events in Romania.